Share screen, here we go. Okay, so Richard and I did a lot of talking, and we found that in many ways our systems are very similar in what it creates in people, in that it starts to create a shared understanding and a sense of belonging and I would say a sense of shared values and beliefs. I don't know if Richard would agree with that, but I think
yes, that's right. That's good.
That's how we came to do it. Now, I'm really keen on this, creating a sense of shared understanding and beliefs from my time in Sierra Leone. I went out to Sierra Leone in the middle of the Troubles with my ship, and the head of the police there had been sent out from the Manchester police force to sort out a police force that had been disbanded at some stage and to rebuild it. And before he left, he was called in by the minister, who was Claire Shaw, and she said, "I want to see a plan. I want to see what you're going to do." And although he says he wrote it on a cigarette packet, he didn't smoke, so it wasn't true. But basically, he wrote down 2 words for her, 3 words: shared beliefs and values. And he said when he got to Sierra Leone, that's all he did, was create an organization that had the same shared beliefs and understanding, only recruiting people who had the same values as him and beliefs. And he created an incredible police force. They arrested me at one stage, so they must have been quite good. So, what I find interesting with the beliefs and teasing out what is the beliefs of an organization is this problem that beliefs, understanding beliefs is an iterative, self-reflective process. But it's important because beliefs are an irrational and emotional control of our ideas. And they tend to be the basis of your decisions. So you need to understand when 2 people start arguing, it's often from 2 different belief systems. So the first question that I would ask is exactly the same as Richard's. Who are we? What's our identity? Now, I believe in actual action creates our beliefs and so on, and it's very simple, going back to Spencer Brown, if you make a distinction, an indication from a distinction, according to Spencer Brown, you must already have a value. You can't make a decision unless you've got a value of some sort. So right almost at the beginning of all our decisions is some form of belief. So I look to see what an organization says about itself under the very simple premise, say what you do and do what you say. So these are words I've taken from our website, or the Club of Remy's website, which says we're a loose-knit cyberspace community. So what does that mean, loose-knit? Does it mean that we're diverse, we're random, or is it from a wide range of disciplines? What I would ask for a debate about, what do we mean by loosely knit? And then cyberspace and references to cybernetics. What about the derivatives of cybernetics? Inaction, distributive systems theory, Lerman, all these other things. Presumably, do they come under the heading of cybernetics? And also club. We use the word club. Now, club is a social group, normally, a group of people with a purpose. Socially organized is how I think I looked it up. Do we have a motto? It's quite interesting. Often I ask people to put 3 words together to say who we are. And I find that quite interesting. Recently, my wife bought a mohair blanket from, can't remember the name of the company, Aroka or something, a makeup. And their motto, which was woven onto a little label, was weaving a hug. And I thought, how clever. 3 words that say what this blanket firm do, weaving a hug. Sometimes when you have trouble trying to say who you are, it's sometimes worth trying to say who you're not. So who are we not? You know, if we had somebody, a scientist turn up who's a very strong positivist, who didn't believe in second order cybernetics, do we want him in the club? Is he welcome? Are we, so is there someone, and one of the questions that I always find very interesting is, if we are us, who's them? Is them, and I find it hard to answer that there's a them, but in many organizations, there's a them, and that helps define their identity. Now, very often, you start off with this purpose of trying to find identity and you get nowhere. So you have to move on to certain areas. The next area is, what do we believe? Now, we all seem to believe different things. I think Jason comes from a teaching background. Is it teaching? Lowell seems to come from communications. Lowick comes from a background of Lerman and constructivists. Bernard, when he's here, comes from Pasque. I think Pasque was a constructivist as well. But there must be something, there must be some belief that brings us all here. And what is it? And for me, at a first guess, but I'm not trying to put words into people's mouths, I've just put this down to give you some example. I would say that we all have a belief in the power of systems thinking. And I'd leave it at that. I've put on the end of that sentence.
The first belief. The first belief is that you're all of me.
So,
okay.
So that one there, the power of systems thinking to solve some of the world's problems. I often start a lot of my lectures off with a quote that I say is from Einstein, but I don't think he ever made it. It's one of those famous quotes that nobody ever made, which was, the problems of the world will not be solved by the thinking that made them. In other words, I think I would say that nearly all of us are coming to this site because we believe that systems thinking is a powerful new way of, or powerful way of thinking to address problems. Do we believe in being non-partisan, open-minded, impartial, inclusive? If we had somebody turn up with very strong views about something, would we exclude him? Or would we, so who would we exclude? Or who would Jason exclude, because it's his class? I have a feeling it might be people who do 18 slides for their presentation.
You are tolerated.
What philosophy are we based in? And again, are we? I'm a critical realist but I'm fair, but I'm also emancipatory in the sense of Kant or Habermas, in that I believe that we can do well in the world, we can improve the world. But I'm very sure there's radical constructivist, positivist, and logical empiricism amongst our group. So what would bring all those philosophies together? Is that a problem, or can we understand each other if we're talking in different philosophies? If we're talking about problems, we actually need to know what is a problem. I define, and I had this discussion, a very brief discussion with Lucio, who wrote to me to say, when I had said that systems are embedded in a human system and the systems are that way because the humans want it. And he said, no, sometimes things happen because they're unexpected. My answer is that somewhere in the system, those people, that there is somebody who's powerful enough and controlling it, wants that system the way it is. We could get rid of cars in the world tomorrow. There's a lot of people that want cars. That would block it. There's an oil industry that's been blocking it for years. So systems are embedded in human systems, and a problem can be defined as something that's stopping a change that needs to happen for the system. The other thing I think is really important is, at this stage to mention, is WIFM. What's in it for me? People won't come here unless there's something in it for them. So when you're looking at what we do and why we do it, you have to make that as inclusive as possible. There has to be something in it for everybody. What do we value? Most of us are academics in one way or another. Do we value good scholarship? Do we like to see quality of work and ideas, and the quality of relationships? So those are very difficult questions to answer. And the way I solve them, the way I do it is to tease it out. Remember, this is an iterative process. You keep going back through it several times. But I've written down here the purposes, what the organization has said in various places that it says it does. So somewhere it said that we work through contemporary social problems and that we create provisional policy recommendations grounded in cybernetic thinking. And there's an implied one, I think, there, that we develop SD concepts and understanding. Those are our purposes. And across here, I've tracked down what from those ideals that I created. Again, I don't want to put, this is, if you follow my process, what I do is make this a group process. Do we want, our ideals, an ideal via von Forrester was a belief, ACOF, I beg your pardon, was a goal that can't be achieved. It's an ideal. Do we want to be impartial, non-partisan force for good, based in the real world, emancipatory? Do we want to show the power and value of systems thinking to spread the word, which is the one I was thinking about? Do we want to improve our individual and collective knowledge with an open mind, or to create an inclusive SD community that people turn to for advice? So those could be our ideals. What I then do is create outputs by multiplying those. I say, how could we work through contemporary societal problems to be an impartial, non-partisan force for good? And I try and get the group to fill in as many reasons as they could there. And I've put in a whole range of things that I thought as I did this product. And the reason I like this process is if you just sit with a group of people and say, what do we want to do then? It's a bit like those 4 vultures in the Jungle Book that sit on the branch and say, I don't know, what do you want to do? And you keep going around in circles. So I like, ultimately what I'm trying to do is to develop this as a software package that allows groups to tease through and construct and self-organize without needing consultants and experts and all that sort of thing. So what I feel that we're doing at the moment, and for me, well, not for me, but for many people, it might be all they want. And that's a good thing too. But we seem to be working in this right-hand box here to create an inclusive SD community. Now, if we look at some of the stated aims working through contemporary social problems, we don't really do that. But you could argue that somewhere along the line, with our diverse talks and everything, we're going to influence somehow. And again, we don't create provisional policy recommendations grounded in cybernetic thinking. I haven't seen us do that, but we could be sowing the seeds for that with people that are coming to our site or coming to the site. And lastly, developing SD concepts and understanding. We're doing quite a lot of that. We're doing in-house lectures, webinars. We're not really doing research, but we are creating a network. So out of everything that the organization says it does in this whole area here, we're really only doing this. And that seems to be a source of discontent for some people, but I don't think it is for others. So that's a discussion that I think people would have to have. The next thing I do in that process, having created a large number, sorry, just going back to this one, these ones in the middle are outcomes. The next thing I do is apply values. So those, and I've only done one example here, say good scholarship. If one of the outcomes was to conduct in-house lectures, I would then say, how do we apply good scholarship to that? Do we insist that people reference their work? Should people include the latest developments, almost a literary review? Should people work, should the work be skeptical, in other words, balanced? So we could provide what I call these basically how. This is ultimately you end up with quite a large number of statements saying how we should operate. And what becomes quite interesting is some of those tend to be paradoxes. And so you have to start having quite a long conversation about, well, this square says we should be skeptical, but this one over here says we should push something or other. So eventually you find that you have to put priorities onto what you're doing, because you're in a circle of logic. You're in a circle of logic already. What I normally do then, if we've then sort of got some idea of beliefs, that's just the starter for 10. What I would then do was take all the hows, which are the little comments you've made, and build, which are basically the processes. What you've done is to tease out the processes that you want in your organization. And I would build a concept map of those hows to look at those that are autopoietic. In other words, they're creating themselves. How are we going to do that? And also, do we have any rituals? Do we have any things that we're doing because we want to highlight them or structure them? I would also try and build a state space map to understand, how do we change state? Okay, so what we've done is we've probably done this process for one situation. What about other situations? And we would start to look at that. So my answer to that is, nobody seems to have built a state space map for if there was a pandemic in the world. Okay.
Oh, no,
now, the problem is, what you've done is the top down. You can't see through emergence. The outcome and the hows are the emergent properties of the desired system. But to create them, you have to develop the synergies within the people and the subsystems through self-organization and action. You have to start doing stuff that's, and then you have to look to see if you're doing stuff that's going to create those things. So you've now got a routine going around. And I call that growing the garden. I mean, most people, gardening is a better metaphor than system design or all these sort of things. You plant stuff and it doesn't grow, or it grows where it doesn't want to. You have to keep going through the process. And I use an enterprise system based on the VSM that basically, if you have time, I'll show you at some stage. But that is essentially the process. I forgot to say one thing. When you're looking at processes, use verbs, not nouns. So if with a group of people you say a house, it doesn't really show you the processes. If you use verbs, housing, gardening, decorating, cleaning, you tend to tease out the processes more. Essentially, that's put into that small diagram. The only thing I would say for Club Remy, do you really want to do all of this? Because when you get to the stage of looking at all of this, there's an awful lot of work there. Who's going to do that work? How are we going to do it? For me, and the reason I'm going down the concept of trying to create an app is because I think it has leverage. So if I could create an app that sits on everyone's iPhone that somehow automatically does this process for them and shows them what their beliefs are from their actions, it's creating leverage far beyond what I could do if I tried to talk to everybody or to do it. So one of the options I put to Club Remy is it worth writing a book? Could you do all of this through writing a book or something like that? That's basically my concepts.
Questions for clarification?
Yeah, let me raise something. Very nice, very interesting to listen to. Interesting also to see all those distinctions. What comes up in me is that the levels are different. So, and you sometimes bridge this by using the word we. So we know that that there are unintended consequences at the organizational level, that individual action is embedded and also not embedded, and that there is tension between those goals. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up.
Yes, so I mean, that's really useful, Loet. So in any organization, so for me, I bring everything into the VSM, and the VSM is made up of homeostats, and those homeostats are attention. And I spend a lot of time taking it from management cybernetics of Stafford Beer into a social setting. So the coherent coordination of groups would be a tension between harmony and discord. And because you can't often see that, that's why often these tensions are made a ritual of some sort so that we can identify them. In fact, often people hold a ceremony where they actually play out or act out some of these tensions to show people where they exist. And that's why I talked about creating rituals in an organization. We already have rituals. We already come on early and start a chat. We already get told off if we have more than 7 slides. We already, if you look at it, have some of these tensions that Loet's talking about. Yes, you're absolutely right.
I would add one comment to it, Jonathan, which I think was perhaps, to me personally, the most important thing that you pointed out. And this is that the necessity of recognizing the role of emergence, the distinction here between the goals and plans that people put together as a group that require emergence, and this is an unknown of exactly how it will emerge. And I think that's a very crucial distinction, but not overwhelming, of course, between yours and Richard's discussions.
Well, let me speak to that a minute. In the course of the discussions to create the maps, there's a heck of a lot of emergence that does occur.
Yes.
It does happen.
Yes, it does. But the clarification is in the semantics, not the syntax.
So I've been trying to understand this because for 20 years I was involved in change management and I got absolutely nowhere. And I got nowhere because I was trying to do top-down design, believing that you could steer an organization, you could control an organization. What I have realized is that you need to start off an organization by doing stuff. And then you need to realize, why are you making these decisions? Well, you're making these decisions because your values are something. So the process goes round and round in circles. You do something and that will have created a value. Why did you choose that value? And what I find is that most organizations, the top down and the bottom up, have no connection whatsoever. What they state is their purpose isn't what they're doing. And so I have a software package I use that tries to bring all that into cohesion. And it's quite interesting in that I ban email in my organization. I make everybody use the software app. I'll show that to you some other time, but I use it for my daily life as well. It's the one I'm trying to